Hey guys and gals, and it's that time of week again. It's time for another volume of Tips and Tricks Thursdays from the team here at BlenderTek.com. Don't forget to like the video and to subscribe for more Blender, Unity 3D, programming, Photoshop, and all sorts of other videos. The team tries to add at least one quality video a day. And lastly, don't forget to remember, create your way. So today we'll be on volume 9, I believe. Today I've got a few to put down, but I haven't really been putting as much time into databasing tips and tricks that I can share with you guys. Just the background on this, I use 3 pieces of software. One for every hour and a half. It gives me a little dialogue that says, okay, you need a 5-minute break, get up and get a coffee or get something to eat or whatever, but I can skip that, no problem. So I run that, but I also run another piece of software that every 4 hours, it makes me take a half-hour break, and it actually physically locks my computer for 15 minutes. And of course, there's a hotkey that lets me skip that, but it's extremely long and hard to remember, and you can't change it. So it is actually good designing on their part. But yeah, so basically every 4 hours, it forces me to take a break. And then I use another piece of software. I don't usually recommend paid software at all. I don't endorse any paid software unless there's a specific reason for it in a tutorial. But I use Manic Time. It's a time tracking software, and what it does is it tracks what programs you're using all day, how long you were in them, what documents you had open, etc., what pages, and so on and so forth. And so basically I've been spending on average about 3 hours a day on Blender, about 2 hours video editing, about 2.5 hours on the internet, about an hour watching tutorials, about an hour coding and working in Unity, and then the rest is just miscellaneous other stuff, reading ebooks, whatever. And in total, I'm spending about 12 hours a day on the computer and 12 hours a day away. So anyways, how that relates is, and I spend 3 hours a day gaming too, because I've become addicted to Farming Simulator. So because I've been spending so little time in Blender, only 3 hours a day, I haven't had a lot of time to come up with tips and tricks, is the problem there. So I've been planning my hotkey edition for a long time, so I think I might integrate that into this one. And then there's a bunch I missed from volume 8 that I totally forgot about that I'm going to put in this one. And yeah, we'll go from there. Let's get to the tips and tricks. So yeah, I'm still using the December 1st daily build, the 2.73 beta. It seems like they're not making a lot of changes, or they're just hiding the changes in the daily builds, or they're not putting the changes in the daily builds yet, but a lot of the scripts are updated. You can tell because it's version 2.73 is where all the scripts are held when you download the daily build. So it is coming soon, it looks like, and some of the scripts are great. I've got nothing, just a couple Python errors here and there, but the 2.73 beta is daily build, whatever you want to call it, is rock stable. Otherwise, I haven't had a single crash yet, just a few Python errors. So let's get started. So the first thing I wanted to bring up was recently I've been putting all my time into the how to model and rig hydraulic excavator. And so one of the problems I had, let me just hide my armature here. One of the problems I had, let me hide these two, was I needed to make these rams that were this length, and they had to be pretty much perfect, because what I first did was I first started with just a circle up here, and then I just basically built it downwards and tried to get everything equal, but the ram had to be a separate part from the cylinder, obviously, so that it could slide in and out. But what I did was I just extruded down all the way through, and then I built the base and extruded it down, and tried to line it up by rotating around the origin point, which I set up here, but it wasn't 100% perfect. So after a certain point of the arm moving, the ram would come out of the actual cylinder. So that was a problem. So I said, okay, I need to make a perfectly straight piston. How do I, like, ram, hydraulic cylinder or pneumatic cylinder, whatever your project might need, how do I do that? And so I thought about it. Well, the easiest way to do that is just to create it up and down, but how do I get this length since it's angled? I thought, okay, I could maybe rotate the image in Photoshop, but there's actually a much easier way to do this. So the first thing I thought was I was just going to go and create a line. So what I did was I'll just go into edit mode. I'll grab a vertex, I'll duplicate it. I just set a vertex at the center point because I wanted it from center to center. And then I just extruded a line down to the end of it where I thought it would about end, and so that is the exact length. Now there are ways to get the length of lines. You can open up the end panel and you can turn on edge length, and it'll tell you how long it needs to be. That's helpful, yes. There's also a ruler function in, let's see, where is it? Yes, under grease pencil, there's the ruler / protractor tool, and even the pros usually don't know this exists. Now the problem is you need to start your measuring somewhere, so I can start down there somewhere, but I can't snap to it anywhere. However, once I click, then I can snap my second position to somewhere. What is snapping? Control and drag. So yeah, then I can snap, but as you can see, it doesn't seem to work. I can click, drag, and then snap, and it gets me 7.026, which is obviously a lot different than 6.987. So you can see the problem there. So how I solved this quite simply was I knew this was the total length I needed, so I just grabbed this along the Y and I lined it up along there, and that gave me the perfect height that I needed for this piston. But now you're gonna say, okay, well, now you got 6.22, that's a different length. That's because when you move something like that, you're working with triangles. So with a little bit of math, all you need to do is just use Pythagoras theorem, and you can get the actual length that you need from the length here. And you don't really need to do that. You can just use this length. So that's what I did to get a length of something that is angled in your blueprints. So that's just something that I wanted to quickly bring forward, because I thought it was something that people might run into. I ran into it. I didn't really know a good way to solve it. I think ultimately the best way, though, is, if you can get it as best as possible, is to just use select your edge and just use the edge length info. That seems to be the best way. You can also do face areas. You can do angles of faces. You can do angles of edges. It's got a bunch of stuff in there, so that is very useful in the end panel there. What next? So here's a pretty common one, but I don't know if everyone knows about it. Let me go into solid mode so we can kind of see. If you've got something selected, you can hit, let me turn on screencast keys. I always forget it. I need to make a script that'll automatically turn on screencast keys or something every time, and I can just turn it off when I'm just working, not recording. Anyways, if you hit Control and Numpad Plus, it grows your selection. It really doesn't work perfectly. Like, you can see it grows it in every direction, but in certain instances it can work very useful to grow it in certain ways to grab certain pieces. So that's just something to use. And you can also Control Numpad minus also subtracts. So that's just another way to select things that comes in useful. It's fairly well known, but just something I wanted to throw out there, and I can cross it off my list. Another one is we have pie menus. You have to enable it because it's not an official, it's not officially in Blender, but it's an official add-on. And so yeah, you get your pie menus like tab, you can go into all the different modes, Z, you can go into all the different shading. But by accident one day I found out I accidentally pressed Q, and I realized you can get the different views. So instead of using my numpad, I can just go Q and either hit the number just above, because Q is really close to the horizontal number pad, so that's useful, or I can just use my mouse, which I don't use too often, but yeah. And so this view menu, it's got this extra feature here called More. You can change from perspective to orthographic. You can get local view, which brings you, well, you know what local view, that's just numpad / to get you to edit one object or one mesh at a time, sorry. And there's all these other functions in here. Align camera to view. We all know the hotkey for that, but that's just a nice way to do that. Toggle quad view. That brings that up real quick, and then you can just go Q more, toggle quad view, and you go right back. So that's, I found, actually very useful. View all objects in the space that you have. View selected, so that's focus basically. It'll focus on the object you have selected. So I found this Q menu by accident, and then I realized that it had this more function that brought up all sorts of other things. And so I found that very useful, and I found it accidentally. So I don't know what other pie menus exist other than the obvious ones, but that one was very kind of an eureka moment. Also, another one that people don't realize is your info panel. This bar right here that houses your views and your scenes and the basic file menu, as well as your render engine and your information. If you grab and bring it down, you have a console. So you can see I had some errors here. So you can see that I had some errors when it came to using the ruler. It must be some Python errors in this script in this version. So yeah, you can see that it does every single thing. If I select something else, if I go into object mode, you'll see, okay, I went into toggled edit mode. Now where this comes in useful is when you actually go to animate something. If I turn on my armature again, if I was to go into pose mode, which is control tab by the way, okay, if you're in object mode with an armature selected, you can go control tab to move in between object and pose mode. That's pose mode toggle, I guess. If I go to rotate something, you'll see it gives you these values, but also if there's a problem with your setup, like for example, if my bone constraints had an issue with it, it would come up here. You'd have no other way of knowing that your rig or your animation or whatever was having a problem, and it's not an error, it's more of a warning. If you're a programmer with Visual Studio or whatever, you know the difference between a warning and an error. Warning's not critical, an error is going to stop you flat. So these are more warnings. But yeah, if there's an error with your armature setup when you go to do something, it's going to let you know in the console. So a lot of people don't know that the console exists because it's always hidden up there. No one knows to drag that down unless it's by accident. And it records everything you do. I don't know, just something to be aware of. It's basically a debug system for Blender, basically. Here's another one I figured out accidentally. Let me select a mesh and go to materials. I don't think it really matters what I use. If you select a value, I click and hold, and then, oh yeah, okay, so like this is a good example. You've got your rotation angles right here, 90, negative, well, 0, 90. Now, I can change Z as much as I want. But what I can do is if I click and hold and drag up, you can see I can move all three at once. I can move two at once. Well, I guess you can't change it once you've already selected. But basically, yeah, you can do all three at once, or I can just click and drag and do two at once. I can't go across. It has to be, basically you can see how these are boxed in. There are three different values in one function, the rotation function, but it works with anything like this. I can't remember where I figured this out, but it works in anything where values are boxed into one function like this. So that's just something to be aware of. You can basically, I call it scrubbing two values, or scrubbing more than one value at once. So that's just another useful one to throw in your brain compartments and decompartments, as my catchphrase goes. And I was watching a tutorial, and holding down control did something else. You can tell that holding down control goes incrementally, but control did something else. I think it was like, oh, I can't remember what it was now, but holding down control with two different values did something else too. It had something to do with scrubbing, and then you held down control, and then you could use a different value. I'll have to come back to that one another day, because it was actually very useful. It was similar, but it did a completely separate function that was very, very useful. Here's another one that comes in useful that I didn't know exist until just recently. If you're moving something to another layer, okay, yeah, you just do that. And then I can move it back to this layer, whatever layer. But I realized that if you click and hold, you can just move it to any layer wherever you're clicking and dragging to. So I can move it to any, you can see on the right hand side how it's moving, well, you can see anywhere how it's moving layers, and you can see down at the bottom down here how it's moving layers. So move layer, click, drag, and that's just a quick way to scrub through layers essentially. So that was kind of cool, I found. And in case you didn't know, the number pad scrubs through layers as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I believe it's control 1 or shift 1, 2, 3 selects multiple ones, and there's a way to get the bottom one. Alt 1, 2, 3, 4 does the other one, so you can go Alt Shift 1, 2, 3, and then you can hold down shift, let go of alt, and then go 1, 2. So you can use the keyboard completely to select layers, because what's the Blender motto? Keep one hand on the keyboard and one hand on the mouse. That's basically all I had written down, because I've been putting so much work into this excavator, because I'm using it for a game that I've been working on lately. Like I told you, if you watched the previous edition, I think I said that I was going to be busy with some personal projects in the upcoming weeks till about Christmas time. But when I also set out the BlenderTek goals, my goal was to January to have it completely self-sufficient, basically, where it generated enough revenue to cover web hosting and any other small fees that I need, like subscriptions to texture websites or whatever. I'm gonna just throw in some more. Like I said, I was gonna make a hotkey edition, but I feel this is a little bit short for you guys. I've also shown it before, but I just want to make sure that I get these all out of the way. If you create, let's just say circle, we'll fill it. We'll go into edit mode. We'll fill it in. Go to the side view. If you hold down Control and left click, it extrudes wherever your cursor is. So this is a quick way to make curved objects, and then you can go and line up all the lines after. You know, I can go scale Y0 or no scale Z0 to even that out, and then I can select this edge loop GY and then snap it to there to level it all out, and you can go and line it all up after. So that's a quick way to create curved objects without using a Bezier curve or something like that. I've said that one before though. And building on that, if you've got something selected, whoops, I'm gonna use brush select actually. This is one I found out accidentally, and then I saw it actually on the Blender Girl website. If you go to 3D, I don't even think you need to choose 3D cursor, but if you set your 3D cursor, let's say right here, then hit Shift W, it's the bend function, which bends around the 3D cursor, and you gotta play with it to get it proper. But let's say I went back and I had just extruded this straight up, and then I put a ton of subdivisions in it, or a ton of loop cuts, sorry, so that I made nice quads. So about 30 or whatever I did. And then I selected almost all of them, put my cursor right there. You can also just move cursor to selected because you want it to bend right in the middle there. And then hit Shift W, now your 3D cursor's down there, put your cursor at the top, because that also changes how this works. Shift W, you don't need to hold it down, you can just press it, and then you can pull it along, and if you pull it along in a nice enough curve, or a nice enough radius, you can get a nice curve out of things, and you'll see how that changes things, so you can get different looks out of it. But since I've added so many loop cuts, by making a perfect 90-degree angle with my cursor right about to there, it's pretty straight, you can see that it's made a real nice curve, and it happened very, very fast, again, without having to use curves. So I've shown that before, but that's just a better way to show it. So if I go back into solid and then shade smooth, there you go. Go into object mode, instant pipe, just like that. But yeah, I've done that one before. Quick, Control Alt Z brings up your undo history instead of just Control Z to undo or Control Shift Z to redo. Control Alt Z brings your undo history, so I can go back to enter edit mode, and it'll go back to where I had my original circle. Another commonly known one, but very useful if you don't know about it, if you're in rendered mode and it's taking a long time to render because it's a complex scene, and let's say I'm working on the bucket and I want to see it in rendered mode, all I do is I press Shift B, and you'll see it's like the box selection tool, but I select an area, and now it'll only render that area. Okay, how come that didn't work? But I know if I go spacebar for the dynamic spacebar menu and then go set render border, See, it says the hotkey Shift B, so I don't know why that doesn't work, but then basically you select an area and it'll only render that. Now if you move the camera, it's going to move, obviously, but if you're setting up materials, this is great because you can set up the materials and it's not going to slow down by having to render the rest of your model. You can see how quickly that renders 10 samples. It's basically instant. And then to undo that, it's just Control Shift B. No, it's Control Alt B. So Control Alt B clears that. And now, before I leave you guys off, I'm going to reiterate two of my favorites. So, usually you've got your camera set up to whatever view you like, and let me turn on my camera. Oh no, it isn't hidden. So usually you would select my camera. Usually you'd press G to grab it, you'd rotate it, whatever. You can't scale it, sorry. Yeah, you G or R to set it up, but my favorite is Shift F. This is fly-through mode. So you see at the bottom, you can see all the options. I'm not going to go over them because I've gone over them twice before, but this lets you fly around your level. I'm going to turn up the speed here. Whoa, that's way too fast. This lets you fly around your, I guess not your level, sorry, your mesh, your scene, I guess, and since I have my camera selected, I'm in camera mode. Since I pressed numpad 0, all I have to do is choose the angle I want and click, and that's my new camera setup. So that's a nice easy way to set the camera up perfectly. Let's say I wanted a lower view, I just pressed Q or E. See, I wanted looking up, just like that. Boom. And you can also just do this in regular mode too. You can just go Shift F and you can go around. And if you have physical objects, you don't think you need rigid body enabled, you can turn gravity on with tab on gravity. Okay, well, it appears maybe you need rigid bodies, but yeah, you can walk around any levels you create if you're doing game design. That's very useful. There you go. Yeah, I can walk around on my mesh, but my speed's too fast, so I fall right off it. So yeah, you can walk around and preview your level as if it was a first-person shooter. So yeah, that's just very useful, and then just right-click to get out of it or escape. And my utterly absolute favorite one that I keep reiterating, I still haven't mastered it. I don't expect anyone else to, but I'm gonna keep reiterating it. If you go to Add a Mesh, Shift A, see these underlined letters: M for mesh, C for curve, S for surface, T for text, A for armature, E for empty. All you got to do is press those letters and it instantly brings you to that menu. So I want the mesh menu, so I'm going to go Shift A and press M. It brings me to the mesh menu. Now you'll see in the mesh menu with G, well, grading's an add-on, P for plane, C for cube, R for circle, U for UV sphere, I for icosphere, Y for cylinder, etc, etc, etc. So I'm always adding in planes constantly. So all I do is Shift A MP and a plane's added. Shift A MP, plane. Shift A MP, plane. Shift A MC, cube. Shift A MC, cube. Shift A MY, MY, cylinder. Shift A MU, MU, UV sphere. Shift M I, icosphere. So quick way to do that. And in the node editor, oh, not the logic editor, node editor. Let me just bring up a material. You can also do this with nodes. Shift A, you'll notice that things are underlined. So my favorite is Shift ATT for an image texture because you're always opening up image textures. So it's just that easy, bringing up image texture nodes instead of duplicating them, which is about as fast. But once you get used to this, you can add any shader. Like H is for the shader menu, so Shift A, H for shaders, and then you can see M is mix, G is glossy, A is add, T is transparent, R is refraction, glass is B. So mix and add is one I use a lot, so I've got it memorized. Shift A, H, M for mix, Shift A, M, A for add, Shift A, I'm using mesh. Shift A, H, A for add. Shift A, H, G for glossy. Shift A, H, D for diffuse. So that works there too. So basically any place you have a menu where there's underlined letters, you just have to press that letter to get into that menu. So just like that. And if you didn't know, also there is when you go to add a node in, there is a search function. So you can search for something. Like a lot of people don't know about Blackbody. Blackbody is extremely useful. If you don't know what Blackbody is in CGI, go look it up. I'm going to make a tutorial on Blackbody, actually, Blackbody lighting. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for now. So thanks for watching from the team here at BlenderTek.com. Again, that's BlenderTek.com. If you enjoyed this video and learned something, please like it. And don't forget to subscribe for more Blender, Unity 3D, programming, Photoshop, and all sorts of other videos. We also now offer hard copies of our videos. So if you'd like a copy to download on your computer to watch later, let us know and we will upload it to our server for you to watch later in the media player of your choice. If you disliked this video for some reason, don't just leave. Instead, leave a comment or email the team at info@BlenderTek.com about what you did not like so that we can improve upon from community response. If you like something, also let us know. We also take requests for tutorials, so let us know what you want or want more of. Anyways, see you next time, and remember, create your way.